Welcome back to Midnight Signal AI. Today is June 21st, 2026, and we've got a day packed with model rumors, product rollouts, and a few stories that say as much about the AI race as the tech itself.
Yeah, the big picture today is pretty clear. Frontier labs are still fighting for mindshare. Google is pushing deeper into practical deployment, and the rest of the industry keeps bumping into safety, policy, and trust questions. Let's start with the freshest model talk.
First up, from Games.gg and the wider rumor mill, OpenAI may be stealth testing what people are calling GPT-5.6 inside ChatGPT. The headline here is simple. Users think the model suddenly got smarter.
And that's the key part. Even without an official launch, the rumor itself becomes part of the competitive pressure. If people believe ChatGPT is improving under the hood, OpenAI gets credit for momentum, whether or not there's a big reveal.
Exactly. And what makes this one interesting is the pattern. OpenAI has been shipping and testing in small, hard-to-see ways lately, so a quiet internal upgrade doesn't feel far-fetched. The real question is whether this is a meaningful jump or just users noticing a better day from a model they already use all the time.
Either way, it reinforces how little breathing room the frontier leaders have now. One perceived step forward can reset the conversation for the whole market.
Speaking of frontier models, MakeUseOf says Claude's new model earned the hype after a week of real work. That's a very different kind of signal, not a rumor, but a hands-on test that suggests Anthropic is still winning people over on practical tasks.
That kind of review matters because it's closer to how customers actually buy. People are less interested in a single benchmark spike than in whether the model can hold up over a week of meetings, drafting, and problem solving.
Right, and Anthropic has leaned into that posture for a while, careful, capable, and aimed at serious work. If a new model can keep that reputation intact while improving the day-to-day experience, that's a real competitive moat.
It also gives Anthropic something OpenAI and Google both need to fight for: durable trust, not just headline velocity.
Next, Google Research introduced Agentic RAG for Gemini Enterprise, and the pitch is pretty straightforward: retrieval that doesn't quit after the first search. Instead of stopping when the first answer looks good, the system keeps digging.
That's a meaningful shift. A lot of AI systems can find something useful. Fewer can recover from the first wrong turn, ask again, and keep the task alive until the answer is actually solid.
And for enterprise buyers, that's the whole game. If Gemini can turn search into a more persistent process, it's not just about better answers, it's about fewer dead ends for employees trying to get real work done.
Which means Google is trying to own the boring, valuable layer, the part where AI becomes dependable inside the workflow, not just impressive in a demo.
Staying with Google, SMBtech reports that Gemini models are coming to Apple developers, while Firebase is being expanded across the AI toolchain. That's a pretty important distribution move because it puts Google's models into more of the places developers already build.
That's smart because developers don't just choose models, they choose ecosystems. If Google can make Gemini feel native inside familiar tools, that lowers the barrier more than another flashy launch would.
And it's also a signal that Google understands the real battleground. The model matters, sure, but so do the SDKs, the surrounding services, and the path of least resistance from idea to shipped product.
That kind of bundling can be powerful. It's not just use Gemini, it's build around Gemini without making your life harder.
Now to consumer hardware. Tech Times says Google Home is getting a new speaker launch on June 25th, and Gemini is replacing Assistant after 6 years. That's a big symbolic handoff because it marks the end of the old Assistant era.
I think the symbolism matters almost as much as the product. Google is basically saying the old Assistant brand isn't enough anymore, and the consumer layer needs to feel like real AI, not just voice commands with a new label.
And if the launch lands well, it could be a useful proof point for Gemini beyond the browser and enterprise screens. Home devices are unforgiving, though. If it feels even slightly clumsy, users notice immediately.
Exactly. In the home, polish is the product.
Switching gears, NDTV says Anthropic's Fable 5 was suddenly restricted and then disappeared, and multiple outlets are framing it as a serious event around safety and access. We're not getting a full official explanation in the summary, but the pattern is clear. Something about the model crossed a line fast enough to trigger pullback.
This is one of those stories where the absence of detail is itself telling. If a model vanishes or gets restricted that quickly, it tells you the industry is still balancing capability against how much risk it's willing to tolerate in public.
And it also feeds the bigger enterprise conversation. If customers fear a model can be pulled or constrained without much warning, they start thinking harder about portability, self-hosting, and vendor dependence.
Which is exactly why these safety incidents matter beyond the headline. They shape purchasing behavior.
Final P2 item. Fortune says Sam Altman isn't exactly thrilled about being a public company CEO, but OpenAI is still taking steps to compete in the AI IPO blitz. That's a governance story as much as a business one.
That tension is going to matter a lot. The public markets want clarity, cadence, and clean numbers. AI labs, on the other hand, often want flexibility, secrecy, and room to move fast.
Right, and if OpenAI is really positioning for a more public market-friendly future, that will affect everything from product announcements to capital strategy. It's not just a finance story, it shapes how the company behaves.
And the whole sector watches because whichever lab moves towards the public markets first will basically set expectations for everyone else.
Now let's shift gears to robotics, and this one is about a problem that sits right at the edge of useful and scary. Multi-agent robots can learn to communicate in ways that look smart in training, but once you put them in a drone swarm or a fleet of autonomous vehicles, you really want guarantees, not just good vibes. The paper's approach is clever. Take those learned communication policies, distill them into decision trees, and then formally verify the trees. That gives engineers something interpretable enough to inspect and structured enough to check against safety rules.
That's a big deal because in robotics, one weird edge case can turn into a very expensive headline. If the method scales, it could become a real bridge between modern learning systems and the kind of assurance people actually need before deploying them.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the future of robotics isn't just about making agents smarter, it's about making them provably dependable when they have to work together. On the hardware side, this is a very practical cautionary tale for the push into FP4 training. The pitch for FP4 is obvious: smaller memory footprint, lower bandwidth pressure, and cheaper pre-training runs. But the paper argues that the common E2-M1 style formats have a built-in problem called shrinkage bias, a negative rounding tendency caused by the geometry of the bins themselves. What makes this interesting is that the paper isn't saying FP4 is broken, it's saying the default choice can quietly accumulate error during training, and those little errors can compound in ways that matter a lot once you scale up.
So the message for chip designers and training teams is basically, don't assume the number format is just a detail. At these scales, the format is part of the algorithm.
Right, and that's why this kind of work matters now. As Blackwell, Rubin, and competing accelerator generations keep pushing lower precision, the winners will be the teams that understand not just how to run faster, but how to keep the math honest while they do it. And to end on a lighter note, a courtroom win gave the AI rivalry universe another chapter to argue about. OpenAI beat xAI in a trade secret lawsuit, which is exactly the kind of news that turns into instant online commentary. The funny thing is how these disputes become part legal story, part personality contest, part spectator sport.
Absolutely. At this point, the drama around AI companies can be almost as watched as the products themselves.
And that's the lighter truth for tonight. Sometimes the most human thing in tech is still the argument.
So, across today's stories, a few themes stand out. First, frontier models are still mostly competing on perception and trust as much as raw capability. Whether that's a rumored GPT bump, Claude winning a week of real work, or Anthropic abruptly constraining Fable 5. Second, Google keeps pushing from every angle: enterprise retrieval, developer tooling, and the smart home. And third, the business model questions are getting louder, from safety-driven access limits to the pressure of public market expectations. The next phase of AI feels less like a sprint to a single breakthrough and more like a test of who can ship reliably, safely, and everywhere at once.
That's the signal for today. We'll keep tracking the releases, the reversals, and the real-world tests. Stay curious, stay informed. See you tomorrow.